Hello and welcome to Soul Symbols. My name is Shelley and I'd like to welcome you to my channel. What I've been doing lately is the majority of the content on my channel is related to card reading and oracle for well-being. But what I've been doing is I've been participating in a class in college, a non-credit course that talks a lot about environmental health and where we are in the current state of taking care of our planet. I felt like this was a wonderful cause. It was a cause I've always been very interested in. And so I decided to go ahead and do a series of videos that I call Eco Girl in a Modern World. This video series is dedicated to talking about the very real topics that we face today when trying to, leave less of a human footprint on our planet. And I can say that I've learned so much. A lot of it is very real information. It's not always pretty facts, but a lot of it is also very positive in the way that, we have faced challenges in the past, and as a nation, as a planet, as an entire group effort, we have turned things around in a lot of ways. So I do believe that with that, the effort starts on a very small scale. It starts with you and me, and every little bit helps. So today's topic that I wanted to talk about was one of my favorites. Today we're going to talk about recycling. And recycling is very near and dear to my heart. I've done it for a very long time, and but one thing that I always like to say, especially in this series, is that right off the bat, I always declare I am a total hypocrite in my daily habits. I'm not a perfect person when it comes to this. Like I'm nowhere near to being zero trash the way that I would like to be. But through learning and knowing how things work, which is a lot of science and it's a lot of common sense, and then it's a lot of habit and changing of habit. I can say that I've learned a lot of things. I've recycled for years, and then just recently I've learned new things that I never knew before. So to jump right into it, I'm going to touch back a little bit. The first video that I did was called Fossil Fuels, and so I'm just going to reiterate a little bit of that video just because it's important to know that information before we get into the recycling part. And basically, fossil fuels is what creates all of our plastics. And what we have to remember is that before the 50s, not even that long ago, less than 70 years ago, there was not half as much plastic as we see today. The plastic is everywhere. It's in everything that we touch. It touches our food. It touches our lives. It's embedded in our lives. And honestly, plastic it's quite a miracle in the fact that we discovered how it could benefit us. But of course, anything that we create, we have to learn how to decreate or learn how it goes back into the earth. But to understand it better, we do have to understand the science. And you hear it in the news all the time. We talk about fossil fuels. And fossil fuels are basically our great ancestors buried deep in the earth. It is marine life and plant life. And it's interesting. I've started to, not even to joke, I've started to say, okay, is what I'm drinking from a dead fish or a dead seaweed? And the reason that I call it that is because fossil fuels are crude oil and natural gas or coal. And you hear that every day. Natural gas is what heats our homes. It's what you use on your stove. If you don't have electricity, if you don't use electric stoves. And then, natural crude oil fuels our cars, and it fuels our heaters. And what it does is that, those two elements, all of those elements come from millennia old dead fish or plants. And what's interesting is that, millennia ago, if a seaweed died, a plant died, which is very what you see now with phytoplankton. It's the same process of living and dying. And all of those ancient plants what they would do is sink to the bottom of the ocean, and they passed away, and then they were layered in sediment. And then after heat and pressure and time and eruptions, they became just like coal becomes a diamond under pressure, these plants, these remains of the plants became coal. Now, the marine life, like any dead fish, turtles, you could go to the Museum of Natural History at the Smithsonian or any museum and see those real, what they call terabytes, or it's really ancient living sea life, ancient fish. And they went through the same process. They lived, they died, they got compressurized into the ground, and there was a lot more ocean back then. It was before the ice caps, so long ago. And then they became crude oil and natural gas, right? And so, we learned, in the 1700s, we learned that burning coal can power things. We learned that pulling gas, so crude oil, can power things. And then, of course, we got smart enough to say, oh, how can we turn this into something else? And we turned it into plastic. And that's the amazing thing to me, is that anything that you touch and everything around you is plastic. This computer monitor, when you touch that, you are touching the remnants of millennial old fish and plants, right? And that in itself is quite miraculous. But the thing is, you can turn the miracle is that you can turn fossil fuels into anything. Plastic can take any form, right? It's when you crack crude oil, it becomes ethane. When you crack natural gas, it becomes propane. Ethane becomes ethylene, and then polyethylene, which is plastic. Propene becomes propylene or polypropylene. And in a minute, when we start looking at the chart for plastic, you can actually see, am I drinking from a dead fish or a dead plant? And that's kind of good to know. But long story short, it's amazing that fossil fuels can become, it's multi-use, but it going back into the ground is not multi-use. We have to learn that just because we can form it into something, we also need to be able to break it back down. And that's where we're getting into a corner. We've got two problems. Fossil fuels are not infinite. The amount of fossil fuels, the amount of natural gas, the amount of crude oil we have left probably will last us anywhere from 52 to 110 years if we keep using it the way that we have. That's the caveat, guys, okay? Just don't, before we get gloom and doom, if we keep using it the way we have, if we keep pulling it from the ground. And this you will see in the news. You'll see arguments about the Alaskan pipeline, because what we want is we want to pull, big oil companies, they want to pull more oil. We don't have much of it left. Do we want to be using that precious resource? Because when we bury the plastic, it doesn't become that dead fish again. Plastic, on average, biodegrades, actually goes back into the ground anywhere from 70 to 450 years. Now, plastic can be recycled about 7 to 9 times, but this is where we'll get into a hard fact, and then we'll get into the solutions. It can be recycled 7 to 9 times, but how often do we just throw it away? And even after you recycle plastic once, it degrades a lot, meaning that even after you recycle it, only about 40 or 50% actually can go into something new. And you can test this too. If you've ever looked at a container, it'll say 40% recycled plastic or 50% recycled paper, because it can't be 100%. Recycling has its flaws. So again, moving forward, and as we go through this conversation, we're going to talk about things that we can do differently, because we need to get off fossil fuels. We need to get off them yesterday, right? No more drinking out of a dead fish, no more drinking out of a dead plant, because that plastic is not going to go back to being what it was in the beginning, because we modified it. So the solution: reduce, reuse, recycle. And let's get to the recycling part. So we've talked about the tough part. Let's go ahead and talk about what's good about recycling. Now, what's good about recycling is that a lot of the country has gotten on board with it, which is great. In the 80s and the 90s, we really just threw everything away, which is really not good, not good. There's several articles and some very famous publications that you'll probably see very soon that will, and again, when it comes to the news, there's a saying, if it bleeds, it leads. It wants to shock you. It wants to scare you because it gets your attention that way. But I'm definitely all about positive reinforcement. I don't want to believe that we're in a dystopian, or that we're going to have a dystopian future in 50 years. We did in the 80s have a carbon crisis with the air quality, and we turned that around as a planet. All of the nations got together and said, okay, no more chloroform, no more CFCs. And we reversed ozone pollution. We did a good job with that. We're still working on that. We can do the same with plastic. We can get out of the hole that we got ourselves into. The other thing that you also have to remember is that this is not any one generation's fault. A lot of times people thought, oh, if it's coming from a fossil fuel, that came from the earth, that'll go back into the earth. And it really is kind of a proof in the pudding kind of thing. It's like, when has any technology not had its trial and error, right? And usually humans, we made it, so therefore we are the test subjects for it, right? So, but we really do not want to pass this problem on to future generations. So, as time went on, I think we did get wise. We started to see that our landfills were starting to become 40% plastic. And of that 40% plastic, it was mostly food containers, straws, which we are talking about in a minute, and just a lot of, single-use things that were hard plastic and not recyclable. Now, the beauty is that just about every county, just about every state has a recycling program. And so let's start with the big one, your local neighborhood recycling program. Most of them will take anything that has the little triangle on your plastic. So let's first talk about how you recycle plastic. That's the big deal, because yes, let's go ahead and see how we can at least get that. If we're going to use that plastic, container, can we at least get it recycled at least once or twice or a couple times? But I will be honest, the other solution is that we do have to get away from them entirely, because unfortunately, we can't continue to lean on it, right? But if you put your plastic into the recycle bin, many communities have what they call single stream recycling. And this is actually a really great program. It used to be that when recycling first started out, it used to have that you separate everything, right? You had a bin for glass, you had a bin for aluminum, you had a bin for plastics, and then you separated your paper, and then you had some communities even have composting piles, which is really cool if you don't do that in your own home. But they went away from that because honestly, they were still the biggest danger with recycling is that you have to be a good sorter. You have to be good at sorting, right? And you have to commit to it. That's the other. Remember, we're talking about changing our habits. So if you are a good sorter, if you know what is recyclable, what is not, and how to make sure that you're not putting something that doesn't belong in the trash, and vice versa. So the number one tip is that you do need to have your recycling bin, your in-house recycling receptacle. So normally most people have a bin inside the house that collects everything, and then you take that bin outside to the bigger blue bin that gets picked up with the trash, right? So have that inside receptacle next to a regular trash bin. That way they're both side by side, and it's going to be easy for you to choose and say, okay, this goes here, that goes there, and it'll be very little impact on your day, right? The second thing is look up your most recycling companies, when they are what they call single stream, which means everything goes into one bin. So instead, a lot of companies have made it where you don't have to sort anymore. Like you don't have to separate it anymore. It doesn't have to be glass here, plastic there. It can they call it all in, right? And waste management companies do that to make it easy on you as the consumer, because they want you to recycle and they want to make it easy for you. But you got to help them help you. And the way that you do that is you go to their website, go to your recycling or your county's website, and really look at the rules. Look at the rules. Either that, or if you've got a chance, go out to your recycling place. And that is very eye-opening. It's a little scary for some people because the recycling center is always right next to the landfill. right? But it's the same place that you go to if you're recycling things like tube televisions or, turning in things like paint canisters. You have to go to the landfill for that anyway. While you're there, go ahead and see how they handle your recycling. But go to their website and see your list. I call it the golden list, right? Now, the first and foremost, if it's single stream, you want to make sure that you're not contaminating the what's in your bin with something that's going to be hard for your recycling company to pull out. And the number one biggest culprit, plastic bags. Plastic bags, like the handled bags you get at the grocery store, or the clear plastic bags that you might be, a lot of times people, and I do it myself, I put clear plastic bags in my recycling receptacle to keep it clean, right? Because I don't want to be I'm clean, I rinse out my recyclables, but you don't want the bin to become dirty. That bag, when you're done, cannot go in with your recyclables. The reason being, or any grocery bags either. The reason being is because those thin plastic bags, they tangle. There's single stream recycling is an automated process with conveyor belts. There's different stages of it where one stage pulls out all the metal, another stage separates all the paper. It does it automatically, but it's a gigantic machine. There's a few areas of it that are human, but even those humans sometimes have trouble reaching out and grabbing that plastic bag if you tied up all your recyclables. So if you have single stream, leave it loose and do not put any bags in there. Now, where we get confused with this is that a lot of grocery bags do have a recycling triangle on it. And the reason that they have it is because those bags are recyclable, but that it's not in with your recycling that the trash picks up. You got to take those bags to the grocery store. The other thing is that if you have any cellophane wrapping, you have to look for the triangle as well. Like there's a lot of toilet paper that has the recycling, but that cellophane has to go with your grocery bags. It cannot go into your regular recycling, so that's an important one. This one was also something new that I learned. Ziploc brand baggies. They are recyclable. But you do the same thing. You put it with your grocery bags and take it to your grocery store. And actually, my grocery store is really neat. They have an outside container that has a solar panel on top, and you just put all the bags in, and it takes it. So I drop them off. I drop off my plastic bags right as I'm walking into the grocery store. It's extremely convenient, and it doesn't even involve a separate trip anywhere. So that's number one. Single stream recycling, keep the baggies out. That's a separate recycling process, and it's very, just keep them separate. Don't even put any of those bags in with your single stream. The next thing is know your triangles. And this is where we get into is it a dead fish? Is it a dead plant, right? But the first thing you want to do is you want to look at the bottom of your plastics, which is going to be a majority of what goes into your recycling bin. There's different triangles, and it's 1 through 7. And again, anything that's ethane is going to be crude oil based. So that would be all of your dead fish stuff. And then natural gas is propane, and that would be any of your dead seaweed planets products. But anything that has that triangle can go into the recycling bag. Your blue bin. Now, the things that you cannot include with your plastic, and this is important, is that if there's anything that's metal, that's a part of your plastic, that is not recyclable. And unfortunately, the culprit that I see the most is this. You see how there's a coil in there? That, while the rest of it might be recyclable, the fact that it's multi-part and has that coil inside, you can't throw that in your recycling. You have to take this pump off and put just the bottle that has the triangle in. Now, I've worked around that a few times. Now, what you could possibly do is if you're finding that these pumps are on your facial, are on lotion or on soap, you could choose to use either bar soap, or you could use, or you can decide to use hand lotion that has a screw off cap. And I see a lot of people going towards that. The other thing that I see the most is that sometimes these little pumps come on like little perfume containers, and I feel guilty. I don't like throwing these away. And one other solution that you can do is that if it does, a lot of these little perfume containers are glass now. So what you can do is you can pop off the pump, clean them out real good, and then if you have a little funnel, you can kind of spray your favorite perfume into it and reuse it as like a travel travel things. So that's one way that you don't have to throw away a pump, because these don't go in the blue bin. Now, the next thing that you can do is, sometimes, you will, in that same vein, sometimes you will find things that are dropper bottles. And, again, the serums that I use, like this is one that's currently being used, and this is one. Sometimes you can, again, just take the top off and recycle the bottle. The glass dropper part does pop off, so you could either clean it out and reuse it, or you could try to separate it and just recycle the glass parts. Unfortunately, the little rubber squeegee type is not going to be, something that you can throw in the bin. But I do have other things that I use it for. And it's funny, there's a lot of really great videos here on YouTube that talk about home tonics that you can make. You can make mixtures of things that you could buy on the shelves, the same thing. You just put aloe vera, essential oils, and other ingredients that are very healthy for you, and reuse the bottles. I've actually been real good. All of the brown bottles that a lot of my vitamins come in, I've taken the labels off of them, and I've been trying to use them as much as possible. I really am looking for merchants that sell things more in cardboard than they do in plastic, and that's difficult. That's going to be a paradigm shift that I think will be coming soon. But I definitely try to reuse the glass as much as possible, because, and believe it or not, it looks really nice. I like seeing the straight glass without all the labels. It looks really neat, and I'll even show you a picture of my of my vitamin shelf. It looks better that way, I think. Now, sometimes you can reuse the dropper bottles in different ways. This was a little travel size that I got as like a free gift. And what I'll do is I'll do the same thing, is that I'll put some of the serum in this, and then when I'm traveling, that's less bulk, and it's just enough to get me through the 2 or 3 days that, I'm traveling with. Now, the other thing about recycling, glass is fine, as long as it's not tempered glass. It can't be a Pyrex dish or anything that has plastic in it, because tempered means that it's been treated to not break. And unfortunately, that the golden rule with recycling is just like with the pumps. If there are any cross of anything, if you've got plastic mixed with metal, or if you've got, plastic mixed with glass, like drinking glasses or Pyrex dishes, unfortunately cannot go into your single bin recycling. Now, aluminum is our friend. Aluminum is so amazing because, believe it or not, there was patents done at the turn of the century for aluminum cans, and also tin cans. I'm sorry, tin was patented at the beginning of the century of the 1900s. But it's interesting, tin is, there's a lot more of it in the planet, but aluminum at first was very difficult to mine. It was, it made up a certain amount of the Earth's crust. It was a good majority. It was like easy, there was an abundance of it, but it was difficult to mine until we got a little bit more evolved. And now it is just infinite recyclable, just like glass. There's no limit on the number of times aluminum can be recycled. So if you're drinking your soda out of aluminum can, if any beverage that you have out of aluminum can, and there's actually a really great video here on YouTube too. I don't know if I can share the link, but that talks about how aluminum is recycled, and it's really quite neat. It's exciting, and that again, that gives me a lot of hope. That is something that is reused all the time, and it doesn't have that limit the way plastic does. So aluminum cups, aluminum containers would actually be a very good bet. Now, the only thing with tin cans, because you do still see tin cans, is that like soup cans, when you open up that soup, there are some cans that you see that have a lining of plastic. If it's lined with plastic, unfortunately, that tin can is not recyclable. So you do want to be careful with that. But glass, aluminum, plastic, all in. Throw it in loose in your blue bin. Also, cardboard, magazines, and newspapers. Newspapers do have a limit on the number of times they can be recycled. I think it's like 5 to 7, but still that's better than, it's better than not at all. And you can check that too when you look at your cereal boxes, or you look at the box that you're using. It usually says like 50 to 60% recycled paper. I'm seeing a lot of more greeting cards that say that too. So I think that's very positive, and that's from the effort of you doing your due diligence with your recycling. Now, you will see that when you look at a graph, usually the recycling numbers for the little triangles of plastic go from 1 to like 7. 7 usually indicates other, like the little triangle for plastic that says 7. Now, there's a new factor that's been going on, is that there is a number 7 plastic that is called PLA. It is polylactic acid. And guess what that is, guys? Those are the new bioplastics that you are seeing. What it is it's plastic that's made from plant oil, particularly corn. So, so you'll see an influx of that, and it feels and looks just like regular plastic, and that's really exciting. Now, there are pros and cons to that type of plastic. The first pro is that it doesn't use fossil fuels. And that's excellent. We don't want to be using any more of that finite resource just for plastics, right? And the other pro about it is that it can be recycled. Now, the con of it is that it says that it's biodegradable, or it says that it's compostable. Like when you read on it, it'll say bioplastic, compostable. But if you read the fine print, what it's saying is it says that it is compostable at a facility degree of heat. And what that means, it means it's compostable if you throw it in a landfill, because a landfill is heated to 60 degrees Celsius. And I'll go ahead and put up what 60 degrees Celsius equates to in Fahrenheit. I know my state is felt that way in the summer, but I know it's not really that hot. It's really freaking hot. But long story short, it's not the kind of compostable that you think. Like, you can't shred it up and put it on your flower bed and expect it to biodegrade in a year. That's not how the bioplastic works, unfortunately. It has to be heated up to a certain grade. And now, the other con that we're running into is that even though it's biodegradable, it is made of biological ingredients. The problem is that aside from it having to be like super melted in order for it to biodegrade, they are starting to do initial tests that show that it's not going back into the ground as fast as they thought that it would. Because of course, when they created it, we thought it would do this. We thought that with the dead fish and dead seaweed plastic, that's fossil fuels, we thought it would just go right back. It doesn't work that way, and you can't just throw it away. So unfortunately, that, and the other con is that it keeps us reliant on plastic. Our goal here is to not use the plastics in the first place, because one use anything is no bueno, right? But, the other good side of it is that the bioplastics, the number 7 PLA or polylactic, you can put it in the recycle bin. Now, the dilemma that they're running into is that when these bioplastics get to the recycling center, they have to be collected and shipped to a different facility. It's what they call an after facility. So it's not recycled at your typical recycling plant. It has to go to a different place, because the problem is that bioplastics cannot be processed with fossil fuel plastics. It affects the quality of them. And again, in order for them to be reused, we have to really kind of keep them processed in their own separate ways, because they are different animals. But what you would do is that, that perception, oh, it's compostable, makes us want to throw it right in the trash, and that's really contributing to the problem. So here's my public service announcement. If you see something that is number 7 plastic, PLA or bioplastic, it'll say compostable on it, and It's trying to make us feel like we're being green, and honestly, you're not being green. It's just putting it in a landfill for a different time frame, right? Just know that we don't know how long those plastics don't biodegrade fast. They have to be heated up. They are recyclable. And what we can do to help with that is that it is an alleviation of fossil fuels, but why don't we do this? If you do get one of those biodegradable cups or those compostable cups, PLAs, put it in your recycling bin. Because what'll happen is if we have enough of it, if enough is collected, it will give enough surplus to go to these after centers. Either that, or if we recycle more of these PLAs than we do the regular fossil fuel plastics over time, then we will start to see more facilities create or buy the machines that process that type of plastic. So go ahead and put it in your recycling bin. So just so you know, it's going in a good direction, but our goal is to get off plastics entirely and at least not put those into the landfills. That's what we don't want to do. But some other just daily things that you can do is that if you have the type of plastic that is maybe like an ink cartridge, there's definitely ways that you can recycle other ways. Just like the grocery bags, you can take those to your grocery stores. If you have ink cartridges for like your printer, a lot of office supply stores, like I know for a fact Staples, if you bring these in, first off, you can take them to like, there's a few retail stores that have receptacles that say ink cartridges, but I don't know if that's the other thing that's a little bit of a danger with recycling is you don't know if they're actually doing it. I know we think we're being good, but you never know if it's just being collected as if it were trash. So, you want to be mindful of that before you do it. But I know for a fact, if you go to the office supply stores, especially Staples, they actually have programs that you can enroll for where when you bring these in, they'll make note of how many that you returned. They return these to the ink places, and the ink places refill them. So you're in essence recycling it. You're saving it from the landfill, and you also get an incentive. After you've returned so many ink cartridges, Staples will give you a discount or some kind of incentive for buying more of the same type of cartridge. So that's an excellent way to recycle. The next thing that you would really want to be an advocate for is you want to be aware in your household. You really want to help people understand what you can put in the blue bin and what you cannot put in the blue bin. So, just be an advocate. Go ahead and let people know, that this goes in or this doesn't. Also in your workplace, speak to, if you see that, if you suspect, like if you have a recycling bins at work and you see a lot of trash being put into them, send a letter to your building administration and just say, hey, look, can we have a seminar, or can you have some kind of email or posted signage, that says, there's things you can say, okay, this goes in here, this doesn't. And then also really follow up that that when the recycling's collected, that it is actually going to the recycling center and not just being thrown in the trash. Because I promise you, we do a lot of things to make ourselves feel better because we want to think that we're doing good. But, the first step is that we have to really know. We can't allow ourselves to be blind. We just throw it in the bin and forget about it. We do want to do a little bit of follow-up to make sure that it's going where it needs to go, right? And then, last but not least, one of the coolest things that you can do is you can upcycle, which is a form of recycling, which is if you can't repurpose it, if you can't reuse it the same way that the plastic was formed or the glass was formed, reimagine it. And that's another thing that's great for here on YouTube, and you see it on social media all the time. You see people do really creative things, right? A lot of times at holidays for birthdays, I know I like to sew for holidays and birthdays. You can create gift bags that are cloth that are reusable instead of using wrapping paper. You can use ribbons that are reusable instead of bows that you would throw away. As you've seen, I reuse I showed you how I reuse my vitamins containers. I had some crystal glasses that I really didn't want to recycle, and I turned them into planters for some succulents. I hope they live. I'm a little bad with succulents, so I'm hoping. You wish me luck. I don't have that much of a green thumb. My regular house plants, like Bob, he's good because he's a hardy plant. He's always been very low maintenance, but yeah. But you can do things like that. You can use mugs. I use a lot of mugs for holding things, like holding bags or holding cotton balls or just toiletries. There's really some really wonderful ideas. A lot of times we are going to have separate videos about fashion and about beauty. That's going to be a tough one, but definitely you can reuse containers. I'm just about to run out of some of my eye cream, and I'm going to be trying to reuse this. I'm going to be washing it out and using it to hold something else, instead of, throwing it away or trying to recycle it and, running the risk that it might not be. But, there's a lot of creative ideas out there. Also, if you, there are a few things that are recyclable that you wouldn't imagine are. Like, I recently learned, and this is a new thing too, did you know that Hershey Kisses, the wrappers are aluminum? So if you take the little flag out, and those are pretty biodegradable, you can eat the chocolate, and then if you create if you start saving the little aluminum balls, that would be like an aluminum can. So that's great. A few things to throw out there is that rubber is a natural substance, but it is not the same rubber that's used. There are a few elements that come in a natural form, but we have made into a synthetic form because we don't want to over-farm it. Rubber is one of them. There's a rubber tree plant, but we use synthetic rubber, and unfortunately, synthetic rubber is not recyclable. So like rubber bands, you can't put in the recycling bin, but I do try to reuse them wherever possible. I actually created a rubber band ball that's gotten pretty big, but you can either take it to work or you can keep it and try to find different uses for it. And that's one way to do it. One of the previous videos, I think it was my single-use cup video, I had talked about wine corks. I did not know whether or not they were recyclable. I have learned that there's organic cork, which is rare. What it is that it's mostly farmed in Portugal, and there's actually really great videos on YouTube here that talk about it. That the bark of the tree is actually very. There's a whole artisanship to it. It's like taught generation to generation, but the men take axes and they very gently remove the bark of the tree, and the trees live to be about 200 years old. But that harvesting only happens once every 9 years. So believe it or not, anytime it's like New Year's or a special occasion and you have a glass of champagne, take a look at the cork, because it's probably natural cork. A lot of natural cork goes into bottles of more expensive wine and champagne. The normal stuff that you and I buy has a synthetic cork, but it is plastic based, and there are also videos on how that's made here on YouTube. But that cork can be thrown into the single stream recycling bin because it is plastic. So that's good to know, right? So, and again, I've learned all these little things. So definitely we're going to be talking about food and how to prep and how to, cut down on these things. But this is definitely a few things that you can do to reuse and recycle the stuff that we already use every day. So I hope that this was informative. I'm definitely going to be continuing with this series. We're going to talk about a bunch of different things. And if you are a subscriber, please know that the main content of my channel is going to be the card reading. But from now until Earth Day, we're gonna talk about this. So, but I thank you for stopping by, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.